Great. Thank you, JC. And again, thanks everyone. Hope you enjoyed the networking there, and any feedback for us to continue to make the networking valuable as we're going virtual. Please let JC or I know. But excited and honored here to have Shane Jackson, President of Jackson Healthcare, here to join us. Welcome, Shane.
Thanks. Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So what we'll cover here is start a little bit just some of Shane's background and why he got into healthcare. We'll move into Jackson Healthcare and we'll probably spend most of our time there with the story that, again, amazing story of, started over 20 years ago, but $1 billion healthcare company here in Atlanta. So I want to celebrate that and learn from Shane. And then we'll close with some general thoughts on just Atlanta and healthcare, what Atlanta can do to continue to be a hub for healthcare. And then obviously, as JC mentioned, any questions, put them in the chat. Directly to JC or to the broader group, and then we'll filter those and ask at the end. But with that, we'll kind of jump in. Shane, maybe let's just start a little bit just on some of your background of, why did you decide to get into healthcare? What was exciting or interesting to you about the space?
Yeah, well, some of it was, I guess maybe kind of family tradition. So my father when I was a kid in the late 70s, started what was the first executive search firm for physicians. No one had ever really done that before. And he kind of found a niche and built and grew that business. And when I was young. And so like when I was in high school, my summer jobs was kind of working and being a part of that. And so he ended up selling that business and going and doing other things in healthcare. But when I finished college, I was very attracted to healthcare. I actually really didn't want to be in the search business, but I was really attracted to healthcare. And for me, it's been a great career choice. It's a tough industry to be in, but it's been a great career choice because, the net result of my life's work is that people's lives are saved. And it's, I know everyone, I hope everyone's able to find, passion for what they do and some kind of tie into their life's mission. But it is nice on some of the most frustrating days to think, the end result of what we do is that people get care that otherwise wouldn't get care. And for our business, that's literally true. I mean, we're providing care in most circumstances to people that if we weren't there wouldn't get care. And so it's been, I'm glad I ended up in this industry, because for me personally, it's a pretty important thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's always good that, again, it's not just the bottom line of the dollars and cents or growing revenue or profit, but there's a direct impact, and you can see that tangible impact, which is great. So tell me, obviously having been in healthcare a while and seen healthcare evolve, what are some of the skills or traits that are necessary for somebody who's either looking to get into healthcare or is in healthcare to be successful?
Well, you got to have a lot of resilience. I think we were in our little breakout group, we were kind of talking about being an entrepreneur, particularly in healthcare. And, I'm probably most people in this call are in this industry, so we're a little jaded. I'll admit that I am. But I think I can make a pretty good argument that this is one of the toughest, if not the toughest industries to start a business. Even though it's whatever now, approaching 20% of the entire national economy. I mean, it's a huge, huge industry, but the way it functions is so unique and so different from almost any industry. I mean, we're, again, talking on a call that there's 5,000 hospitals in the United States. And so if you have a product where the hospital is your target, you've got 5,000 shots. Like that's it, which kind of sounds like a lot, but compared to other industries, it's highly concentrated. If you're trying to sell to payers or insurance companies, I mean, that's a fairly limited universe, largely controlled by just a few players. If you're going after physician groups and offices, I mean, they just function differently. They think differently than most other businesses do. And so, yeah, I mean, it's building a business in healthcare is not for the weak of heart. Like you gotta, you've got to be able to really persevere, and in addition to everything else it takes to build a business. So.
No, absolutely, and even just sometimes the capital required or the security required to get something up and running right in healthcare versus a software business. I can put something online tonight and be getting customers, tomorrow type of thing.
Yeah, no doubt. I remember I had a conversation. This was a few years ago now, but it was with a someone in a venture fund in Silicon Valley, and we were talking, and they were moving into healthcare. And I was kind of asking, I was a little surprised because traditionally Silicon Valley has stayed away from healthcare. And I was telling him, I was like, or asking him, what's changing? Like, why now are you more interested in healthcare? And he said, well, traditionally we've been afraid to go in healthcare because it's so highly regulated. But he said, what we've learned from Uber and companies like that is that we believe we can just go into an industry and kind of through brute force and lobbying, get the laws changed. Well, now, first of all, I don't know that Uber would still say that today based on what they've been through in California over the last couple of years. But I told him, I said, look, I just want to make sure we're not talking about, dealing with taxi drivers here. You're talking about people's lives, and the way that reimbursement works and Medicaid works, CMS, like all that. I'm telling you, man, I know you hear this from everyone. It is a different deal, and learning how to navigate that and how that works and all that. I mean, it is it's tremendous, and so it's another challenge I think for entrepreneurs in this industry is the amount of regulation and the way it impacts the way business works. You've got to understand it. If you do understand it, you can, there's great opportunities to be had. But if you don't, you can get in trouble really quick.
Yeah, interesting you say that, Shane. So let me ask a question here, for somebody who's thinking of starting a business. I think you made some interesting points of that. Look, healthcare, if you were to design healthcare from scratch, you probably wouldn't design it the way we have it today, right? So there's plenty of people who are outside of healthcare and say, why wouldn't you do it this way? But then there's the other side of the folks who've been in healthcare for 30 years and understand how payers work and how providers work and the regulations, and the 20 people before who have tried it and can tell you why that didn't work for them, right? If you're going to start a business, how do you balance those two perspectives of fresh enough to not be jaded by why it hasn't worked, but knowledgeable enough to understand how you have to navigate what is there?
Yeah, well, so the way we define a business, like a business is simply a solution to a problem, right? I mean, every one of our businesses, someone has a problem. They may not know about that problem yet, right? But they have something they need to solve for. And that's what businesses do. And we can solve that problem for them in a way that is more valuable than the way that they can do it themselves. And that's why they pay us to do it. Like, that's what businesses are. And in healthcare, it's no different. And so one of the things I've just learned is that typically the main part of solving a problem is of coming up with a solution is really, really understanding the problem. And so, that's what I see a lot just of entrepreneurs in general. Like, where did you get this idea? Well, I was working on this and I was like, why doesn't that work? Or why do people struggle with this? Or, whatever. And I just kept digging and digging and digging, asking why, until I really understood the problem. And then the solution became pretty evident. And I think healthcare is no different from that. If you can really dig in and understand the landscape and the way things work, there are an endless amount of problems to solve for in our industry, right? A lot of because it's just functions so inefficiently, and like you said, you would never design an actual market to work this way. But it does create a ton of opportunity if you can actually understand what the problems are in the landscape. And then there's just there's a tremendous amount of solutions.
I love what you said there, Shane, of starting with the problem. I think it's one of the things that, that we see all the time with early stage entrepreneurs, right? Is that many of the successful ones, they do start with the problem. They understand the problem. They're experts in the problem. And when you do that, the solution can drive to the problem versus, a lot of the ones that we see struggle is, I've got this cool technology and now I'm trying to push it on a problem. And it's just, my experience, much harder to make it work that way than starting with the problem, as you described.
Agreed.
Well, cool. Let me transition a little bit then, Shane, to Jackson Healthcare, and maybe just start with sort of the founding story of how it got started and what was the original idea for Jackson Healthcare.
Yeah, so we officially started the company in 2000. So we just had our 20th anniversary, but really kind of the germ of it came, a year or two before that. So that was, for those of you around back then, that was in the midst of the .com boom. And when internet companies were going crazy, and I guess it was in 2001 when the internet stock bubble burst and all that. But 99, 2000, it was in the middle of that. And so we kind of had a theory back then that while every business was .com this and .com that it was actually there were not going to be that many kind of pure play .coms that were really going to be successful. That the real opportunity was to figure out how we could leverage the internet to differentiate in more traditional businesses. And so for us, being in healthcare, it was how can we leverage the internet in unique ways to create competitive advantage and differentiators in healthcare services. And so that was kind of the founding thesis of our business. Even though, using the internet is not so novel anymore, but that theory, that thesis has really kind of survived for the last 20 years. And so even in our business today, we have a pretty unique blend of healthcare services and technology. And we do have some kind of more pure play technology products and businesses that we have. But even in our service businesses, one of the ways that we differentiate is through our use of technology. And so, the staffing business is still the biggest part of what we do. But I have much bigger tech teams than my competitors do, and so we're able to create a different user experience and all that for our customers that differentiates. And so anyway, that was the idea 22 years ago, and that idea's kind of stuck with us.
Well, interesting. I love how you also tied it into a broader market changing trend. I think one of the things I see that that's going after businesses when you can tie it to a broader market changing trend, right? Whether it's the internet at the time or the rise of smartphones 10 years ago, or even just right now in healthcare, whether it's, we were talking about in our breakout group, the remote patient monitoring and some of the stuff that can be done more proactively. Those trends can also naturally help when you get those right as well, which is interesting that's part of the story. So Shane, as you were getting that going, you had that initial idea and thesis and the differentiation and bringing it going. One of the things we talk about a lot at the early stage is product market fit. And that's an ever evolving thing, and you're always refining that. But as you got going, as you started to bring the first customers on, when or how did you start to know, hey, I think we're on to something here?
Yeah, so it's been, so we've launched, so we have 16 different companies that are part of Jackson Healthcare. About half of them we've started, about half of them we've acquired. And so, but what we don't talk about is the probably 6 or 7 that we've launched and failed, that shut down. And so, we've got experience of, like you said, of like, man, we got something here, like this is going to work. And then we've also got the experience of like, why don't they get it? I don't understand. Why will no one buy this, right? And so we've had both. One thing I will say though, and this is kind of weird, but if you've been an entrepreneur and especially if you've been in more than one business that you've been involved with starting, I bet you kind of had this experience. The ones that worked just were easier. The ones that, eventually failed, like it was like pushing a noodle up a hill, like, And it was, and I think that, and what I say by that is that when we had a problem that we were solving for a customer that they saw like, whoa, this is valuable, it just went smoother. People returned our calls. The sales cycle was shorter. You know, they were willing to be a reference. Like, I mean, you know, all that versus, you know, the other one, we either couldn't articulate the ROI or there just wasn't one there. And we thought they had a problem that they just didn't prioritize that as a problem, you know, that sort of thing. And so, you know, I mean, we're one of the largest providers of telemedicine. Most people don't know that. But when we launched that telemedicine business a few years ago, that was something that I was really personally very, very involved with. And I mean, first of all, it was super fun because we were right on time of the market and we were structuring it in a way that was different than what our competitors were doing. And the customers were like, bring it on. And so, you know, but I think that's you know, it's kind of back to understanding your customer's problem. And by the way, I personally, you know, tried to launch a couple businesses that I'm like, I'm still to this day convinced it would have been very valuable to our customers, but it just wasn't a priority to them. You know, you talk to a hospital CEO, it didn't make their top 10. Yeah, that could have saved me a whole lot of money, but I got things that are on fire over here. I can't worry about, you know, what my front lawn looks like right now. And so, you know, but man, when you nail it, when you get something that you can articulate as a big problem to your customer at the right time, it just, man, things just pop. And that's when business is fun, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, I love what you said there, Shane. That's one of the things I think that we see a lot too. They call it that authentic demand, right? That when that authentic demand is there and you can test it, the customers are leaning in, right?
Yeah.
How much does it cost? How many can I get? How soon can you implement? Versus when it feels like you're pulling it. And I love how you said when it feels hard, you probably don't have it right. And I think we've had some successful ones and some failures that I think match up exactly to what you're saying. So let me talk about that process for a second, Shane, of starting new businesses within the idea. You talk about starting with the problem and getting them going. What is that process like for you or somebody in your company to say, hey, I've got an idea, we could start this new business? Talk us through how you think about starting a new business within your company.
So we actually really, we do this from kind of two different angles. So first of all, one of the things that we do is actually similar to what you brought a minute ago. We have someone who is really always looking at researching, trying to understand kind of big trends, right? You know, going, look, 10, 20 years from now, patients are going to be seen in a different way than they are today. The hospital is going to function in a different way, you know, all that. And so that's a big trend. How do we need to be involved in that trend, right? And so it may be that we, you know, just that's a new market for us that our existing services need to pay attention to, whatever. Or it may be, no, we want to play in that, but we really need to be looking at launching a new service line around that, or acquiring someone that has some assets in that we can, you know, and so we do it from that way. The other way is that we also do a little more ground up, and so we have embedded in most of our businesses kind of an innovation process where we ask them to, you know, every one of the companies, we're always looking for problems to solve, and 99 out of 100 of those problems end up being you know, kind of tweaks our existing business model, or oh, we can do this and solve this for the customer. But every once in a while, there's something that comes up, and we're like, now this is something that we haven't really seen before, and so, you know, it may just be a launch of a new service for us, or it may be you know, a launch of a brand new business. But I will say, typically, that is a more successful strategy for us because if it's more related to something we do, we're typically going to have more understanding of the problem and a better ability to go solve it versus, you know, just looking at kind of one of these big trends where we've got to go acquire a lot of that domain knowledge. But we do it from both perspectives.
Yeah, interesting. So how do you know, one of the things I think that was really interesting about Jackson Healthcare is just the importance of culture. And I think, you know, if you look at their website, you know, most companies list their products and services and pricing. The first thing on Jackson Healthcare's website is culture. So I want to go into that for a little bit, but let me start with it related to what you just said, Shane, of, hey, everybody in the company, you're always asking them to think about what problems they're seeing and ways to improve things. How do you embed that innovative entrepreneurial type culture within your organization?
So it's pretty foundational to our culture. And so let me talk about this. I'll try to talk about this quickly. I have a book out on culture, so I'll try not to recite the whole book to you right now, but real quickly. So we have three fundamental values that we talk about a lot. And those values and like kind of our beliefs on just how you should do business, how you should relate to other people, those types of things, they drive all the decisions that we make in the company. We're very forthright about those. We're very transparent about that. If you go to our website, you'll see it. We want everyone before they even apply to come work here to know what our values are, what our beliefs about business are, and also understand that we're like super serious about it. Because if you don't at some fundamental level, agree or resonate with our values, you're not going to fit in here, and so we don't even want you to apply. The flip side is if you do, like if you're like, man, that really resonates with me, like you're going to love it here. We want you to be a part of our tribe. And so, but one of those values is growth. And when we talk about growth, it's not just growing revenue, growing size, whatever. It's keep getting better. And so we think that we have both an economic and a moral imperative to continue improving in everything that we do. And so that manifests for us in several ways. One of the things that we talk often about is what we call a risk-free environment, meaning we don't punish mistakes, right? On the flip side, we encourage people to try new things, knowing that most of the time they're going to fail, like just by definition, right? And so we want them to fail. We often let people run with projects and encourage them to do things that we know are going to fail because we know they'll learn something from it. And so that's really embedded in just the way we think about our business, and like everyone here kind of gets it, and it's structural, it's purposeful, and all that. And so, but if you punish failure, then you get rid of innovation, right? Because somebody might have tried something this time, and you beat them up about it, they're not going to do that next idea, and that might have been the one, right? And so anyway, so it's very much in our culture, and we're pretty upfront about it.
I love what you say there about sort of the risk-free environment. I think that's one of the challenges many corporate innovation centers or groups or struggle with, because they have the group, but yet they're still trying to hit their quarterly earnings, and it's still all like a mistake is much more damaging than something that's successful. So I think you're spot on with that approach. So as that, the culture, maintaining that, obviously you had that great foundation from the beginning. And as you mentioned, you're trying new companies, and some succeed, some fail, which I think is, to your point, important. Like, as much as we read great stories online of entrepreneurs, all the good ones will tell you it wasn't their first idea, right, or it wasn't, that you have to fail a lot to learn, but it's all about the learning. How do you maintain that culture through several new businesses that some have worked and some haven't, as well as acquisitions? I know I've got an M&A background. I know how hard that is to integrate new cultures into your culture and other thing. How do you maintain the culture as you're through all those different things?
Yeah, well, and you're right, especially in acquisitions, it's hard. And I will say for us, because we have such a focus on culture, it has eliminated some acquisitions that from a just kind of pure, P&L standpoint seem to make sense. I had, this is probably 4 or 5 years ago now, but we had a team, we were looking at a business in Florida to acquire, and we were actually under an LOI with them. We had, they'd gone through a process. We were the, highest bidder, whatever. We were in exclusive negotiations with them, and our team went down to do, like start a week of due diligence meetings with management, that sort of thing. And I was scheduled to go down like on the second day. And that night, like I was really supposed to fly out the next morning, and that night I got a call from our guy that was the lead on the ground down there, and he said, "You don't need to bother coming tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like what did you find?" I'm like, there's something that came up in due diligence. He said after being in their office for a day, he said they won't fit in with us. He's like, he's saying, I'm telling you, the values are too different. And I was like, great, I didn't come. We cut it off right then because I just knew it's important to us. And so for us, it comes back to us. So we're really looking for at some kind of core level, uh, some resonance with our values. Everything is a little bit different, and even within our companies, even the ones we started and the ones that are here in Alpharetta, the cultures are a little bit different. People interpret it different. They do things a little bit different, but at some kind of core level, like our number one value when we talk about the most is others first, and it's thinking about other people before yourself, which by the way is not just a relationship thing, it's a business thing. When you think about the needs of your customer before what the company's trying to get out of a transaction, guess what? That leads to decisions that tend to build really loyal customers over time, right? And because we're private, because we view the business from a very long-term perspective, it's just that value impacts everything that we do. And if that doesn't resonate with someone at some kind of core level, they're just not going to fit in here. And so, now it is tough when we do an acquisition and there's a lot of kind of just beliefs we have or whatever, and you kind of get into it like, that's not the way we do it. And you got to figure out how to navigate that. But if you have some kind of agreement on some of those core values, it's a lot easier to navigate that than if you don't.
Yeah, I love the core values. It helps you bring any decision back to where does it fall on those core values, and it gives you a good guiding light to ground you. I love what you're saying there about culture. And one of the things I love that David Cummings always says is that there's many things in business you can't control, but culture is one thing you are 100% in control of and can be a powerful competitive advantage and differentiator for you. So I love what you're saying there about that, Shane. Well, I know we're getting close to 10 minutes left. Some questions have been coming in. Let me wrap up here just with a question or two, and then we'll open it up for the Q&A. So obviously you built a business here in Atlanta in healthcare. What else could Atlanta be doing, Shane, to help make it a stronger place to start and grow healthcare businesses?
So I've been around the healthcare entrepreneur community, especially in tech, for more than 20 years here in Atlanta. And we have a tremendous number of assets in the HealthIT community here that I don't know if people know. Going back into like kind of the early 90s with companies like HBOC and just some early companies that really, I think, seeded the healthcare community with a ton of talent here. I think in Alpharetta alone, there's more than 100 HealthIT companies. And not to mention everything going on in town and all that. And so there's a ton of talent here. There's a ton of domain knowledge and understanding about the industry, lots of great ideas. One of the things, though, that I think we have not made great progress on in the last 20 to 30 years are the funding mechanisms for businesses that are here. And, it's something that for us, we're focused on trying to be part of that solution. We've I think in the last 18 months, invested in 3 different funds that are focused on venture here in Atlanta. Not all exclusively healthcare, but with a bent to that. And for us, trying to use that as a vehicle to source and find great new companies that are coming up and to figure out how that we can partner with them. And so I'm glad to see some movement and some progress on that. But I just think we've got a ways to go in the angel community and the funding community. It just feels like it's kind of part of the ecosystem that hasn't caught up to the rest of what we have going on here.
Sure, no, that makes sense. So last question, and we'll open up to Q&A. we talked about a lot of things. Shane, love your, starting with the problem and building the culture, and it's okay to fail and setting up that. Any other lessons learned or advice as we wrap up to entrepreneurs just from your experiences being in healthcare?
Huh. Yeah, well, boy, narrow it down to one. Here's what I would say, and this may be a little counter to the overall narrative that's going on in entrepreneurship right now. But I'm a big believer. We continue to be a big believer in the power of focus. One of the mistakes that I see entrepreneurs make is they try to go out and be all things to all people. They try to go solve too many things at one time. When you can become the absolute expert at solving a particular problem, at doing something that customers need, that's when you have the opportunity to create high levels of value. And it's really tough as an entrepreneur, as a business person, as an individual. It's really tough to distinguish between an adjacency and a distraction, right? And what I mean by that is when you're starting a business, you get in, you're talking to somebody, and they go, "Well, yeah, but like, can you do this?" And it's a hard thing to know. All right, well, so is that something that's an adjacency to my business, what I'm trying to do? And if I can solve that for them also, then I'm really solving the whole problem. Or is that just a distraction from what I'm actually trying to do? That discernment is very, very tough. And but my kind of leaning in that is, I just think the more focused you can become, the more specialized that you can become at something, then it gives you the opportunity to build the beachhead, because you built something that's successful as a solution that later you'll have the ability to come in and kind of pull in some of those adjacencies. But if you start chasing that stuff too soon, you just get distracted. You never get the opportunity to build the core business.
Love that, Shane. The focus. We always talk about find one target customer and one problem that you can solve 10x better, and nail that first before moving out. So I love great advice there as we sort of wrap up. I know we got 6 minutes left here. JC, I'll bring you on.
Yeah.
There's some questions coming in through the chat and stuff. So if you want to pass those on to Shane here.
We do have a couple here. One I do want to start with is, what area of healthcare are most exciting for you in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so there's a few. I think we're going to see, as I said earlier, you're going to see a fundamental change, and we already are, in where patients are seen. Hospitals are the type of patients and what they do, what they see, is we're already starting to see this change. But I think 10 years from now, it's going to be very different. They're going to be, hospitals are really going to only be caring for the sickest of the sick, and you're going to see much more happening in the home in particular. I think we'll continue to see, other healthcare facilities, but I think it's going to see more and more in the home. And so anything that enables care outside the hospital, particularly in the home, I just think there's a lot of opportunity there. Part of that for us, obviously, telemedicine is not new anymore, but we think it's in the midst of experiencing some 10x growth. A lot of it caused by the pandemic, and a lot of it caused by now changes in reimbursement as a result of that. But that's part of the mix in providing care in different settings, in addition to the wearables and all that sort of thing. And so that's an area that we're really in tune with.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear and see. Here's another question that's a little more broader, but hopefully aligns kind of with your culture and such. What's the kindest thing someone has ever done for you?
Oh my goodness.
It's a great question.
That is such a great question. So I want to give you two answers to that if I can, but I'll try to do it quickly. The kindest thing in general, I would say, that people do for me is to give me real honest feedback. And it's what this is hard to get people to do in general. I will tell you that once you have any kind of success in life, it becomes harder. And especially just, I mean, I'm being transparent here. Like in my position here in this company, like, nobody ever wants to tell the boss, no one's tell the emperor they have no clothes, right? And so this is one of the things that we really try to foster, again, as a part of our culture, is getting people to be honest with you and that sort of thing. And I super value people that will, with love, give me good feedback. The other thing I'll say is this. I had, this was, a little while back during the election, and I think as things were going on, I have a dear friend. We were on opposite sides of the political aisle, and who called me in the midst of kind of everything that was going on, and I was like, oh my God, I'm about to get into a political argument. This is going to be ugly and whatever. And her call was, she said, look, I just, this is hard for all of us. I know this is going to be particularly hard for you right now, and I just want you to know I'm thinking about you and I care about you. Compare that to what everyone else is saying, and I was like, that it was just tremendous. It made such an impact on me, and I wish we could all talk to each other that way. Maybe we wouldn't have some of the political divisiveness in the country right now.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really great advice. I know we have 2 minutes. I might just try and get one more question here. Any resources that could be helpful or used to find areas in healthcare like needing the most help? Anything that you've seen that could help empower others here on the call? Resources that might you could point them in the right direction. And AT will probably share one at the end here. But any advice there?
So I mean, read. Like I get an email every week with, it's like a summary of kind of big articles, and one of the things that we track is how much attention is being paid to certain things that to certain trends in the industry. So I think you just absorb a lot of content, and then at the end of the day, ask. I think there's nothing like running in traffic to figure out how to solve a problem, and you just got to get out and talk to people and ask your customers.
Yeah, that's great. AT, let's go ahead and wrap up just because we have 1 minute left here. I'll share my screen as well while you're chatting. So yeah.
Great. Well, thanks again. I echo what Shane said. Nothing beats, there's plenty you can read from home, but nothing beats being out talking to folks who are in the field, customers, about what they're working on and what their challenges are. And you start to just hear things from that. And I love how Shane was saying, just ask the deeper questions. Why? How often does that happen? What do you do to try and solve it? Why is that not good enough? And just keep going from there. For those in Atlanta specifically, if the question is more just around general, we've got a bunch of resources that link to other events in Atlanta for healthcare. We've got lists of companies in Atlanta that are doing great things you can check out, as well as all of these meetups and our past meetups are recorded and will be on there as well. Our next event, we have a virtual Atlanta Startup Combos meetup. We'll have 3 early stage entrepreneurs presenting in March. And then our next healthcare meetup, we're targeting late March, early April for that, but more details to come. But again, I'll wrap up. Thanks everybody for joining, and especially thank you, Shane, for all those great insights. Tons of great lessons learned on the problem and the culture and the focus I think anybody can take regardless of what stage your company is at. So again, thank you, Shane. Really appreciate it, and appreciate everybody joining us early this morning.